The academic study of Russia and the former Soviet Union has a long history at Uppsala University. Today, research is conducted at the multidisciplinary Uppsala Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies.
Forced labor, forced begging, forced selling of sexual services. 50 years ago, you couldn't see it in the same way. You couldn't look out the window, see the people. Today, you meet them in the streets. So you see that it's a serious problem. It cannot be denied any longer. It's not just a legal problem, but we have to start somewhere. And the legal area, it allows us to convict people of this crime. And today, we have very few trafficking convictions. So this allows some sort of impunity, I would say, almost. To that this is a low-risk enterprise. You get to resell the same person over and over again with a very little risk of getting caught, with a very little risk of getting convicted. So of course it's blooming. The profits are comparable to profits from sale of narcotics, but the risks are much lower because you don't get caught in the same way, and you can actually resell a person several times. And if you get a conviction, you can always go back and you just continue, basically. So, and we even know that the victims that participate, for instance, in Swedish trials and testify against the traffickers, upon return they are usually re-trafficked. So there are people waiting for them at the airport, and that put them back into exploitation. What is interesting about my book is that it actually questions this international definition that has been of trafficking, that has been quite uncritically, I would say, reproduced in international documents and by the international community. So I found some potential problems in the wording of the international definition of trafficking that I thought maybe could influence the national implementation. So I was curious if that was true. So I looked at 3 very different countries to see if they actually had the problems that corresponded to the problems that I found in the original source. And they did. In Poland, Russia and Sweden have implemented the same provision. So I looked at the provision in question, the international definition of trafficking, Palermo Protocol. The problems are connected to the wording of the international definition. And this has led to a situation where only so-called direct intent is possible. This means that in Sweden, for instance, only people who are responsible for the final exploitation can be seen as principal perpetrators. This book brings something else because it doesn't just criticize the international definition of trafficking, but it also connects it to a specific situation, to a specific context, and it proves that on the national levels there have been problems with implementations that go directly to the original source. What is so interesting about law, that one little word, or 3 words in this case, can have such big importance for the overall development. In this case, it is the wording "for the purpose of" that could be worded with intent to, or some form of intent to. Those words actually lead to a situation on national level where some people, some perpetrators involved in trafficking walk free. I don't think that law is going to magically transform the situation, so changing the international definition would not help to eradicate trafficking, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And the situation that is already bad is just getting worse with a poor, inadequate definition of trafficking that is being reproduced on national levels, where some judges and some prosecutors do not know how to implement or interpret this definition. So people are either walking free, or they are seen as accomplices and not principal perpetrators to the crime, or they are being convicted of procuring instead of trafficking. And that's because we are dealing with an insufficient international definition. And just changing a few words in the definition would actually solve a lot of problems on the legal level. Then, of course, we have different problems with corruption and lacking financial resources and other issues.